Good evening. Tonight is Monday, February 26, 2018. This is the Westwood Board of Selectmen. We will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll grant Westcat permission to video and audio tape tonight's meeting. Is there anybody else who wishes to tape the meeting? Hearing none. Okay. We have one piece of agenda items. We have one agenda item that we need to deal with when we go into executive session and then returning from executive session. The scheduled action is the appointment of Sharon Brown to Westwood's Cultural Council. And Sharon has a very impressive pedigree. Sharon is a literacy volunteer. She currently helps non-native English speakers improve their language skills. Sharon has taught at various levels of academia and has quite an extensive pedigree that we've all been presented with. Sharon unfortunately could not be with us this evening, but I would suggest that even in her absence, we appoint her to the Cultural Council.
Somebody has met with her already?
The chairman of the Cultural Council has met with her
And recommends her.
and recommends that she be appointed.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment about her arts background, which is great for the Cultural Council. It's very impressive. So I move that we appoint Sharon Brown to the Westwood Cultural Council for a term to expire on June 30th, 2020.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. At this time, the Board of Selectmen will be going into executive session to discuss one issue related to potential litigation at University Station, of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussions were in open session. The board will be returning to open session. So I need a motion to
So,
go to
yes,
executive session.
I move we go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
Second.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So at this time, the board will be going into executive session. We will be returning, though, I would say probably 20, 30 minutes. Okay. Board has returned to open session and will be returning to executive session shortly. In the interim, we are going to go to our next agenda item, which is to ratify the fire union contract. Chief Deckers, will you join us? Mike, do you want to tell us anything
Yeah,
about it?
I'll tell you about it. After a year and a half of negotiations, after beginning the process for going in front of JLMC, we had some sessions with the Fire Association, SARS, labor attorneys, to see if we could talk to them one-on-one. And after a couple of conversations with them and the new chief with some new approaches to manning the operation, the union has agreed to what amounts to be a one-year contract and followed by a three-year contract. We had originally looked to have a three-year contract, but now a year and a half in, we both agreed that it would be better to get a four-year contract. State law only allows us to do 3 years at a time, but we had all last year without a contract, so we've agreed that we will retroactively provide a 2-year cost of living increase for last year's service, which was equivalent to what all employees throughout the town, including the school department, have received, and that going forward, the second contract would have a 3% and a 1% and a 2% cost of living increase, again, on average of 2%, exactly the same as all the other contracts. There are a couple of other issues that we addressed. We're going to establish a sick leave bank with them so that they can cover themselves in the event of a a more catastrophic illness among
So
the
that means
members.
somebody who has built up extra days can provide it to someone who is in a
That's
deficit
exactly right.
position, or would
The-
be in a deficit
The
position.
members of the union will contribute to it. We will kick off with some contributions, some of which we will get reimbursed on, just to make sure that for the first few years that they could kick in, and then the association will do this. This is similar to what we have with the police association. We also agreed that we will be creating 2 specialized positions, which the chief is looking for, an EMS coordinator and a fire prevention training coordinator. We have ultimately 2 positions left to, on University Station. I'm not saying that we're creating those necessarily from that at the moment, but these could in the end be the positions that we're creating. Once these are created, they will be staffed during the day, during our peak hour, and they will be considered surge manning. In other words, they're there doing their regular job, but if there's a need for additional firefighters to be ready or to be present in the event that another incident comes in, these 2 individuals will be there to surge, so we won't have to call back additional personnel. And we talked about a health and wellness program that the chief is going to work out with them over the course of, and then we also talked about peak hour staffing. The new approach that we will be taking in the future for overtime is to staff to a peak hour staffing. We're currently staffing at 8 between
9,
9.
yeah. And 9 until those 2 surge folks come on. When the surge folks come on, it will shift down to 8.
Okay. And what we're saying is that between the hours of what, 8 to 8?
8 to 8 is the big surge window. Really, it defines back really to 8 to 3 right now, because that's where our heaviest call volume is. So we're only doing it in a 6 or 7 hour window. And that will all, again, be based on data. Whatever the data drives, the union understands that we will
You'll
massage.
adjust accordingly.
Adjust accordingly.
And so far, what, you've
We've only had to hire back, we started February 13th, and we've probably only filled, I think, 7 shifts since that date, total.
As compared to,
Normally on a month, we were averaging 11 or 12.
so you're already better off.
So that's where we are. These contracts, I think, are very good for both sides. The union is very happy with them. They've signed them already. And we're now asking the Board of Selectmen to approve and sign.
That was my only question. They've already signed?
Okay?
Mike, my only question was, when we talk about the COLAs, the 3%, 1%, 2%, there is, in addition to that, though, there are step increases.
They're out.
And what is the value of those?
Oh, it varies in the firefighter contract.
I don't.
It's around 2.5.
So we should, my only comment if John was here is we should reflect that, because, I mean, people are getting up to 6% increase.
But that's not changed with this contract.
I understand it's not changed, Mike, but it's compensation
Yeah.
through collective bargaining. And there are folks who will get up to 6% increases. We should state that.
It's like the teacher's contract, too. No, I'm not saying, I'm not disagreeing.
I understand
The
contracts.
teachers-
All I'm saying
yeah.
is, we give these raises out, but we.
Yeah, for the record, this is what they're
For the
getting.
record, yep.
Uh-huh.
There's step increases that average 2.5%.
I think the increase from step to step is driven off of the firefighter non-EMT rate. And when you look at the matrix that was given out by HR, the number's not as high as 2% driven there. It's actually at a much smaller quantity as it steps in the firefighter rank, where it jumps, and there's only 2 ranks in the lieutenant and captain, but the firefighter takes almost 8 years?
About 8 years.
8 years to get the top step. So it's drawn out, well out in that process, and it's a much tinier increase. I can drill into that further.
I guess my only point is that I think we shouldn't just say that's a given. behind the scenes, we should reflect that if I was a member of the public and I read this, I wouldn't know about that.
Correct.
And-
What
but
would be nice is
when
a
I'm
summary
reflecting-
sheet of the whole contract.
Yeah.
This is just highlighting things, but it
And
would be
what you
nice.
have in front of you right now
Yeah.
is just the changes to the collective bargaining agreement that we're making. We have one of the clauses, the last clause is a housekeeping, which you will again then see the whole contract in front of you again for signatures to make sure that we sign off after we do the housekeeping. And the housekeeping really is cleaning an or, a the, a comma, and a few other moot language that no longer exists. There was some sunset language in there. So all this does is set forth the changes that were made to the collective bargaining agreement of the last
Yeah,
approved
in
contract.
isolation, though, it looks like
Yeah,
it's
no, and I'm
missing
glad,
something.
you know, you got the new positions. I know you have been seeking that since you got here, so.
I'm curious, what the 312, how did that evolve?
I don't know, that's what they wanted,
don't know.
because it, yeah, they went to front and loaded, but it didn't make a difference because they were immediately going to a 1 in the second year, so the average works out and then a 2, and so everybody was getting 2, 2, 2. It wasn't worth a fight. And where this thing was going to JLMC, this was a minor give on our part to get to a contract, so.
And we are halfway through the year in which that 3% is being offered, and the overtime was much lower in that period. Just, if we're putting all the facts on the table.
These,
So the number was lower opposed if they had thrown the 3 in next
Next
year,
year, right.
when we're doing peak level staffing.
just to add confusion, is our budget that is being presented to the Finance Commission reflective of these terms?
It's being, we are making adjustments to the contract, so it will reflect these terms, yes.
Contract, you mean the budget?
Budget, I mean, yeah, budget.
Material difference?
No, I don't think it's materially different from what we expected.
And have you discussed the terms in any sort of way with the Finance Committee yet, or Commission, and will that come up soon?
No, I generally don't.
Yeah, I know,
discuss
we
with
haven't
them.
signed it.
Yeah,
Bless you.
That's why I said,
yep.
all right.
You guys are the first and the last to
Yeah,
speak
yeah, I
with.
know.
No, I know this was
It's
a lot of work,
delicate.
so congratulations. I mean, it was a lot of time. I'm good, though. Are you all right?
Hey, I am too. I move we vote to approve and sign 2 copies of the memorandum agreement between the Town of Westwood and the Westwood Permanent Firefighters Association Local 1994 IAFF for a term of July 1, 2016 through to June 30th, 2017, and to vote to approve and sign 2 copies of the memorandum of agreement between the Town of Westwood and the Westwood Permanent Firefighters Association, et cetera, for a term of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, as well.
Yeah, and I'll just
Thanks to
add one
Joan.
thing. One
Right.
of the things that the chief was able to also negotiate, because we had some problems, we had a promotional policy which we had adopted in the last contract that wasn't quite working, and so the chief, Scoville before, and followed up by John now, we redefined with the union's assistance the promotion policy, which now works, so we can promote people.
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, chief.
We will now review the warrant articles for this year's town meeting. So the FinCom meeting is next Monday?
Monday, the 50th.
Yes.
Okay. So Mike, obviously I'm assuming the school committee article will be spoken to by a member of the school committee?
That's correct.
Okay.
The superintendent, I would imagine, has already testified about it and will testify further.
Okay. Supplemental appropriations, unpaid bills, town operating budgets through J. So A through J, I'm assuming Pam will speak to?
Yeah, the ones that are ready to go forward, yeah.
Yeah, several, like the budget doesn't get as much attention as it would at the end of March?
Right. Well, the budget won't get attention at all, because the FinCom is still meeting. In fact, I had a meeting this morning, so I doubt that the budget will get attention. But Pam has finished with the capital budgets and some of the other appropriation budgets. So they could decide to go forward with some of those and ask questions.
Okay, are there any street acceptances?
No.
Okay, so can we take that out?
You can take that out.
We need to vote on
What
that,
did we
right?
decide? Was it?
We were just gonna leave it till March 19th, just in case.
We are?
Just,
But
you can take it off. I don't
Yeah.
expect that anything will be.
even
I
if
don't
one
either.
came forward now
I think we wouldn't
that
have
we don't
time.
know about, there's
Right, right.
probably way too much work that would need to be done to bring it up to a town
Exactly.
standard, so.
Road improvements, chapter 90 funds and other state funding,
Yeah, it's just
That's,
stand out.
that's a standard article.
okay. New fund for cable peg money,
Are we ready?
Fund, that's all.
oh, right, okay.
What's that?
Are we set on how it's being recommended, you and Pam, to us for what to do on this cable fund?
No, we met with the attorney today, and we're having discussions with him. I think that we're gonna be removing that before, but I think what we should be doing at this first public hearing is basically say to the FinCom that we are still looking at this. We hope to eliminate it, but we haven't officially made a decision. One of the reasons why I would say that is we have not had a conversation with Westwood Media Center to ensure that they will not oppose us on a rewrite of the contract we have with them. And without that rewrite, I would not eliminate this.
But isn't this time sensitive? Wasn't this being required of us by the state?
Yes, that's why I would like to have that conversation with them in the next week or so.
But do we have, my question, I guess, is do we have the flexibility of time to not do this at Springtown meeting and wait, for instance, to Fall Town meeting if we hold it?
Well, there are two approaches. This approach would be to get an appropriation at town meeting. The other approach doesn't require any town meeting vote at all. All it requires is that we get the cable companies to pay the amounts of money that they have been distributing through us directly to
That's where we want
the Westwood Media.
contract.
That's what we want, a contract. And what we want in a contract is, we want language that says that should anything happen to Westwood Media Center, the monies and the assets that were purchased with the monies that were given directly to them revert back to the town, so we can distribute them to the next version of Westwood Media Center.
Okay, school borrowing, school committee, disposition of property and funding for various aspects of redevelopment.
Still going on.
Still going on,
Negotiations still going on.
So we're not gonna talk about this next, at the 5th?
not in the
I
5th,
just tell them it's ongoing.
it's ongoing.
And then the rest of planning board, right? Or, no, come back to us. Abandonment of portions of hedge, are we gonna be ready for that, Hedgerow Lane?
I know that the developer has met with residents and scheduled an additional meeting, but I haven't received any.
Is that still a question mark?
information that a settlement has come out of it.
Okay,
I don't expect it to go forward, but I'd like you to hold on to it a little longer.
okay. The town bylaw amendment, removal of snow and ice around fire hydrants, Jay Deckers will be handling. We got you back, Johnny, don't worry. No, I said we got you back, don't worry. Amendment to the University of that's the planning board, okay. Then there's petition article and miscellaneous. So we're still kind of in a holding pattern
We
then.
got a
like-
miscellaneous.
Yeah, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
an ad,
Sure.
a possible ad.
This came out today? Yeah, it's just on 2 pages, but that's it.
Okay. So this would be for X?
Yes.
Okay, so the use of miscellaneous articles has been suggested the town do a comprehensive study of security needs of municipal and school buildings. The police chief and fire chief have been working with the school department on active shooter protocols. shelter-in-place evacuations, etc. The suggestion is to present an article that would appropriate a sum of money to conduct a comprehensive study on the school and municipal building security needs. This would include, but not be limited to, cameras, door locks, access points, review of current and drafted procedures, review of policies from both police and fire department responses, trainings that should be conducted and scheduled, cost estimates, and timeliness to implement recommended security measures. Okay. So I'm assuming, so we would appropriate money and hire a third party to do this kind of analysis, is that we?
I mean, we certainly could do that. There'd be an initial level of kind of review that the chief and I would want to go through with staff, and then, my sense is that we'd be looking for some potential outside validation.
Okay.
I think it's important to say that we have been working with the school department, the police department, for the last 3 years have been having discussions with them, but,
Yeah.
because there are continuing events that, the feeling was presented today that we should have a more comprehensive view.
So-
I mean, I think it's a great idea. At my place of employment, we have the Boston University Police, and we went through this. They did what you just described, their initial assessment, and then had a third party come in and kind of validate it, and it was very interesting to see.
I'm just curious, do you have a ballpark, if we start talking about this with Finance Commission, as to what this kind of study would cost?
I have one in my head, but I haven't verified it when I.
Okay. Well, you can come back to us.
Yeah.
So we'll get this ready for
Are
the
you thinking
5th.
low or you thinking high?
I'm thinking about what a normal study like this
Yeah,
would
yeah,
cost,
it would
and
probably be a free cash appropriation,
I would-
which is
that's exactly right.
I mean, we got
a-
7
yeah,
schools to look at. It, plus
municipal term, but
buildings.
it's an available resource that we
yes.
could use to cover this. I think I think we should definitely be pursuing something like this.
Well, Mike, would they do it in phases? Sorry, Nancy, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Would they do it in phases? In other words, we have the largest amount of kids at the high school, I think, although the middle school was closed for a while, right? Or do we start looking at the high school first, and then, because it would seem to make sense that if, with the school committee going forward with their plan, that to assess all of the schools, if 1 or 2 are gonna be replaced, that maybe that's not on the top of the list.
I think we have to talk to them, but you know what we need to do? It's good to use this as a policy, a way to establish a policy for when whatever is proposed by the schools, whatever buildings are proposed, or whatever they do, that there are guidelines that the town has for what would be incorporated into the buildings. I don't know what the MSBA has been thinking about in this regard, but I think it'd be good if the town has something that we say should be designed into any new facilities.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective.
Like cameras would be the first thing to come to mind, right?
Exactly. I think from my perspective, both of those are right? I think in some regard, some of the things we're gonna be looking at, you can apply globally, and it could be a camera upgrade, right? I mean,
Right.
that's right across the board. So other things, as you talk about new buildings, you talk about, okay, well, there's some kind of more substantive changes that would be way too cost prohibitive to try to retrofit some of the buildings we
Right.
have. So various degrees of what we call target hardening, right? So I think those are both correct.
But this is
Yeah, it's almost like
obviously
it's
not
getting-
just schools.
Yeah, it's getting to a point where you almost have to build it into your budget now to continue to upgrade, to stay up with it,
But that's what we need to do.
So it might be one of those things that the long-range planning committee starts to take up.
I'm sure that every municipal building now, like we put bollards
Right.
at the entrance to
The
places.
restaurants,
Yeah.
right.
This is just one more addition that will come in.
Right.
Okay. So that's gonna be, so X, what we'll call the comprehensive public safety study funding,
Building.
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
something like that. So Mike, who will actually draft that?
I'll work on it. I'll work on it this week.
The question is, are we in agreement? It sounds like we are.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're in agreement, then we'll get
Yes.
something drafted for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we can, if you send it out to us before the 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think it's-
Thank
Like
you.
every other article, we'll draft it for you.
thank you.
Thanks, good idea.
So we don't need to take any,
No, we don't.
No,
need
you
to-
should vote
You should
on
vote to
the
add
street.
this.
You're gonna remove street acceptances, so
okay.
vote for,
I'll do 2 motions.
yes.
First, I move that we delete an article tied to street acceptances for the May town meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none.
And then I move that we add to the miscellaneous article X on our schedule, an article to address a comprehensive study of security needs in municipal and school buildings.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Support,
Yep.
forward thinking is important.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we're gonna move on to the Westwood Media Center transfer of funds.
Speaking of Westwood Media Center,
Mike, what are we doing here?
this is standard
Yeah,
operation.
this standard article is, we haven't done anything yet to have it direct, so until we get the money sent over to them directly, you will have to continue to make these appropriations.
And just to add, when you were talking about the contract between us and Westwood Media Center, the need is in the future to have the money go directly. It will no longer go through us for approval, but should Westwood Media Center wind itself down for some reason or another, you were saying,
They
we
would
want
give us back.
everything to revert back to us, including the assets they have and the revenue stream, and we may create another entity, we don't know, but we need a way to deal with something that is not predictable right now.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
But Mike, isn't the MMA just to create a different fund for it, so it doesn't go into the general fund? Can't we still vote it out the same way that, I mean, it comes into that fund, and when the selectmen just
No,
vote
as
it
it was
back out?
explained to us by the attorney today,
Yeah.
and I mean, what was explained to me today was, in somebody's wisdom, they said that these monies, if they came into the town, need to go to the general fund, because all allocations to the, or monies that come into the town are supposed to go to the general fund. The problem is that these funds are created by federal law, and can only be used for public access TV. And so it doesn't make sense for these to go into the general fund. That's really the problem. But if they come into the town, that's where they must go. And then we would have to go to town meeting to get them appropriated out of general fund.
And we wouldn't know the correct amount.
We wouldn't know the correct amount, because it would be, what we do, like, what we do
Estimates,
with
but-
the sewer department is we'd create an enterprise fund, we'd estimate what it would be, and then to the extent that it was more or less, we'd have to make adjustments. Whereas, in this case, as these come in, if they go directly to them, they don't have to go through our general fund. But if they go directly to them, for instance, and we had a problem like we had a couple of years ago, there wouldn't be no ability to say,
No accountability.
no accountability, right?
So we're, just so I'm clear, and maybe I'm missing it, if I do, I apologize. So the money comes in right now is going into the general fund, or it's a separate
not.
fund?
It's, what's happening is, right now,
Yeah,
is technically the problem we have with the state, is the monies are coming in, they're kind of being held in sort of an abeyance until you do what you're doing tonight, and then we ship them over.
but if we just create a special fund, that it goes into that fund, we still need to
That's
come
what they're
out?
saying.
That's what they're
That's what they're
saying,
saying
is
you
you
can't
can't do
do.
that.
That's the whole thing. The state's trying to standardize across the state how it's handled. And there are differences in how municipalities have been handling it.
Well, they're giving us an option, apparently they're not trying to standardize it too much, right? We have a plan
Either
A or
or.
a plan B.
Yeah, but I think it's
Well,
more than that.
the A is to go to the general fund, that's the state's plan. The B is the alternative that you
Give it
could
directly to them.
implement
Yeah,
to
okay.
get around it.
And then we'll be able to take it out twice a year, right? Where we voted out quarterly.
Right. Well, you-
Whenever it's received,
you
it
get-
would go.
Well, yeah, because you have 2 town meetings a year, I guess you could say that, yeah.
But we don't.
Yeah, we don't have
One
a
of them isn't-
guarantee
yeah.
for the second one, you have
Right.
a guarantee for the first.
Maybe
The most probable way that would happen, if you had to do it, would be to set up an enterprise fund. You would estimate the revenues that you would get based on past practice and all of that.
And then make an
Set up a
adjustment,
budget, and to the extent that you were short or over.
make an adjustment like we do in every other
adjustment
fund.
Every year and, at the the following Maytown meeting.
Seems like such an awful lot of work for something that was already working.
It was working very well, actually,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
The way we're doing is preferred.
This
but
is the
it's been
best
taken
way.
away from us.
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we approve the transfer of $20,633.75 and $3,301.36 from Comcast, and $42,139.51 and $13,567.16 from Verizon, totaling $79,641.78 to Westwood Media Center per the Westwood Media Center agreements signed by the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do you want to go through minutes from January 8th? I didn't have any changes.
I didn't have any changes.
Christine, page 4. Middle of the page, the board would also like to continue discussion. On the next line, the next sentence, the land has no cost and is supposed to be used for traffic
Yes.
mitigation? Is that right that, Nora, I'm going to put you on the spot, but let me give you the context. In our minutes, it's referring to the parcel of land on Canton Street that's part of University Station development. And our minutes are saying that when we discuss that property, 690 Canton Street, that the land has no cost, but is supposed to be used for traffic mitigation. Did we
I
really?
think they were saying that the town would acquire the land at no cost.
Okay.
Thank you. It didn't seem right to say it this way. I move approval as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes from January 30th?
Page 4 at the top. This is regarding the vote to appoint Rich Shapiro to the Board of Assessors. We need to reflect in the minutes that Maureen Blade was here as a member of the Board of Assessors, and she was the 4th vote.
Oh, yeah. I have that on the decision notice, not in here. So, I can put all, and Hyde, you know,
Yeah.
J. Hickey, M. Walsh, M. Blade. That's how I have it on
I
the
put in parens for her,
Board of
Board
Assessor.
of Assessors.
Yeah.
Okay. I move approval as amended.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Meeting from January 30th?
There's something I'd like added on page 3. It was part of the discussion. It's not a correction what's there, but it's an addition. Under the audit committee report, I had asked that there be standards established for these funds so that when they're reviewed, there's a sign-off by the principal that they have some standard procedures adopted so that it's clear what the school department should be doing every time.
The activities fund?
Yeah, for the respective schools. That was a request I had made of them. Not of them, because the school department wasn't here, but expressed during the meeting that be instituted. And I think it was really for Pam maybe to follow through on with the school department,
That
kind
would-
of sign-off procedure. So it's really just, there needs to be levels of review, and it would be, what I was talking about, appropriate for the school principal to be signing off as having done that review before it goes to central administration. So just an administrative process that everyone needs to follow. So I'll leave it to you again, Christine, to figure
I can
out an
go back.
appropriate way to say that.
Yeah, we can go
Yeah,
back to the
summarize
tape
it.
and
Can
I'll
we-
talk to
Can we
Pam.
bring that one back and review it next time?
Yeah.
And if you can make sure that you bring that to Pam's attention, that maybe she can follow
I'll sit
through
with
on
Pam
that.
and
Thank you.
go through that with her.
Can we just move to a minute, Mike, on the FYIs? And I don't know if, Jeff, you want to talk to it, but the police overtime budget is 84% spent through the first 6 months. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the drivers of that?
Sure. Couple of things. A couple of years ago,
Jeff, can you come?
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Varying as needed, depending on the circumstances. So as it relates to this year's budget, we had a couple of drivers that were significant. One was we lost 2 police officers for almost the entire majority of the fiscal year because they went to the state police. So they get notified, as is typically the case, kind of last minute, when the state police was going to hire, and, you know, if you want the job, you take it, and if you don't, you don't. So there's not a lot of window for that. So they took it and they were gone. But we were at the end of our 2-year list for hiring, so, you know, we were really just starting to move forward with creating a new process, so we weren't in a position where we just had 2 people ready to go to hire. So that was 2 positions on, you know, staffing that's, you know, certainly not abundant, that we had to fill at a time and a half basis. We also had a police officer who was out injured for an extended period of time, required surgery, and then he had a little setback in physical therapy. So those were, I mean, you know, there was a couple other small issues, but principally, I mean, when you lose 2 bodies
Right.
for the fiscal year, it's devastating, so.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was some process issue or budget issue, but losing 2 bodies makes sense. Thank you. The only other question, Mike, I had, and maybe I'm just missing it, Mike, the personnel department position being reclassified?
Yeah.
I don't, what position was that?
The benefits coordinator.
Okay. Do we have, I don't know that we did that here, though.
No, the personnel board did it.
Okay.
What reclassification is done by the personnel board. So they have an objective criteria assessment
Okay.
they conduct, and based on that, they will do the grade level of the positions, and if they feel it's justified, then they'll go forward as a grade adjustment. And that's as we assign new responsibilities to different individuals.
Okay, so that never comes back to us.
It doesn't go back to you, no.
So we authorize the posting of positions.
You have been, yes.
So is there a policy on what we do and what the personnel board does? I find that odd. I guess I'm just trying to understand. If we are the authority on posting of positions,
The posting of a position is just basically saying that the position, it was a policy that was established many, many years ago to basically determine that a position should be filled once vacated. It's just as simple as that. And what we encouraged departments to do was to say, okay, I have a vacancy. Do I really need to fill this position, or can I reassign the duties and not fill a position? Or can I make some adjustment to this position so it'll be more effective? Because oftentimes it's easier to do so when an individual's not in the position than when an individual is in the position. So the vacancies provide an opportunity. On the other hand, the classification of a position is just an objective. Here are the job duties of this position. Oftentimes, because there's been an adjustment, new things like the benefit administrator may have additional responsibilities that have been heaped on in addition to what they had. Are these new responsibilities something that would require or should be adjusting the classification of this position? And so they do that on an objective basis. If they determine that, yes, those duties which are now being added to the job description are sufficient to have a grade increase, then one is assigned. If they are not, then the job description itself is simply updated to reflect all of the duties of the position. No reclassification. It just they adopted. So the job duties of any position go through the personnel board for adoption.
yeah, I mean, we could talk about it offline. I just think it's interesting. We could approve a vacancy in a short period of time with no visibility to us. It could be altered. So I just want to talk a little more about that.
Okay.
Otherwise, I didn't have anything. Do we need to do the review of the board?
No, that was honestly just for your information. When we
Okay.
start the appointment process, we can talk more about it.
And the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is just an FYI as well. Okay, I don't have anything else.
Back into executive session.
Oh, okay. So you need to make a motion, right?
Yeah, do you want to talk about the hydrant policy a little more, or no?
I can.
The what?
If you have
Do you
time.
want to talk about the hydrant bylaw a little bit more, or are you guys happy with?
Has
I th-
anything changed from the
I
last
mean, I think
meeting?
I'm okay, and I think just be prepared for next Monday.
Oh, I forgot, that was taken up at the last meeting.
It was?
Yeah.
We talked about it, they talked about it extensively at the last meeting.
Yeah. I wasn't here, so that's why.
We drafted the bylaw, we put it in
We put John through the ringer.
the packet.
We threw some snowballs at him.
Good.
I didn't,
But I shoveled them off.
We
so
brought
I-
him, we brought him a shovel.
No fines, huh?
No fines. Educational opportunity.
Yeah, we're good on that.
You weren't here, so we
Just gonna
told him
stop
you'd
the
back
snow.
him up at the meeting, you know?
Yeah, I forgot,
script.
I forgot that's when you had discussed it, it was the last
Oh, no,
meeting.
I'll read it again. Okay, all right, we ready? Okay, at this time, the Board of Selectmen will be returning to executive session to discuss one issue related to potential litigation at University Station, of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussion were an open session. The board will not be returning to open session.
I move we go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
Second, but do you have a member of the public who's?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Sorry. Sure.
Adamila Salvovich from Brazio, 32 Webster Street.
I know.
And while Chief Silver is here, and you were talking about the review of the security measures at the schools, I mean, in light of all these terrible, terrible shootings, I did see, and I'm sure the chief will be able to be more well-versed than I am on this, there's a pilot program in Methuen, Massachusetts, and it's an active shooter. I don't know how they did it, but there are cameras in school, and who's ever watching it will see if a door's been breached, and the program itself is $100,000 approximately. And I'm not sure if it's for each individual school district, or I'm sure that's the way it is, because if you're a city, you have a lot of schools. I think that given the school discussion and everything that's going on with the thought at town meeting to go ahead with the building a new school, that I don't have kids, but I think what's happened is like terrible. And if you could incorporate that into whatever it is, the review that you're doing, I think that if you go to the residents of the town and you say, if the residents approve a town meeting for us to go forward with the Hanlon School for phase 1 or whatever it is, and ultimately it's going to cost the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars for a new school, I think to throw in $100,000 or even $500,000 to something like that would be very worthwhile.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, Chief, it's a sound activated, so they can tell a gunshot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nada. Sorry, I didn't see you when your hand was up.
Okay.
We had an external version of gunshot detection in New Bedford, ShotSpotter, so, kind of was, kind of the initial market penetration was outside gunshot detection, ShotSpotter.
Yeah.
And then there's been kind of evolutions from that with interior noise detection, and there's, as you know,
Right.
there's a lot of products.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for that.
He's agreeing, there are a lot of products in the marketplace. I know he wasn't at the microphone, but,
No, that's
yeah,
all right.
why don't you? Because, I mean, Nada's taking the time to speak on it, just so she can.
appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. So, where I used to work in New Bedford, we had a technology, it was a ShotSpotter, which is now called SST, and that was external gunshot detection, and it can differentiate, you have to train it, but almost like Siri on like an Apple product, but you have to train it to differentiate between fireworks and backfire. It comes with a baseline, and then it's able to pinpoint within about a meter or two of where a gunshot's gone off. And from that technology, which is kind of the initial significant market penetration into gunshot detection, it was the springboard for internal environments like inside a school, because of course the acoustics are different inside a building than they are externally. And there's been quite a bit of market penetration now, as you can imagine, with some different companies that are out there looking at different ways to attack that angle, whether it's sound detection, whether it's communication,
opening up apps, direct lines of communication to police officers, teachers, firefighters that are in the area. So there are a lot of products now in the marketplace, all in and surrounding primarily school safety, but also government building safety, and it's available to the private commercial market as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive section, and we have a second. Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Excuse me?
Oh,
Point of order.
I apologize.
I understand that you said you would not be coming back.
We did.
You will want to have the flexibility to potentially come back.
Okay. So I'm going to read that again. Oh, I have it. At this time, the Board of Selectmen will be returning to executive session to discuss one issue related to potential litigation at University Station, of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussion were an open session. The board may be returning to open session.
Is that all right, Mike?
That's all right.
Okay.
I move that we go into executive session for the amended aforementioned reason.
I'll second.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So at this time, the board will be going into executive session, and we may be returning to open session.
I'd say you will be returning to open session to at least close the meeting.
Okay?
Okay.
At this time, the board will be going into executive session and will be returning to open session.
Terrific.
Thank you all. Okay. Welcome back. Tonight is Monday, February 26th, 2018. The Board of Selectmen is returning from executive session for a second time. In open session, we will discuss a memorandum of understanding related to mitigation to a development agreement at University Station. And I will have our outside counsel, Dan Bailey, explain a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little bit of background, when the University Station project was first proposed, the town and the development team entered into a development agreement. That development agreement included an awful lot of things, traffic mitigation, school mitigation, obligations regarding the quality of building. Most of those requirements have been met. The development agreement and the zoning also provided that for elements of the project to go forward in later phases, the town had the right to revisit the development agreement if it felt that additional mitigation was necessary. As a result of the proposed Pulte project, which is adding additional residential units, and as a result of how affordable units are calculated at the existing Bridges unit, the town felt it necessary to discuss with the developer financial contributions to be used to mitigate impacts on affordable housing at University Station. We have a draft memorandum, we have a memorandum of understanding for the board's consideration tonight that does a number of things. One thing it does is it provides the town with $489,000 to be contributed toward affordable housing. This $489,000 is coming from building permit fees that were paid in Phase 1. The original development agreement provides that any building permit fees that are in excess of what it actually costs the town to review plans, inspections, et cetera, in Phase 1 would be returned to the developer. We're talking very rough numbers. There was about $2.7 million in building permit fees in Phase 1, and there were about $2.2 million in expenditures. $2.1 million. And so there's about $589,000 left. Of that $589,000, the town will be allowed to keep $489,000, and $100,000 would go back to the developer. Another change to the development agreement is that all Phase 2 and later building permit fees will be kept by the town. What does that mean? Kept entirely by the town. It means that there'll be no funds returned to the developer for Phase 2 and later phases. Phase 2 has already started. For example, the hotel is a Phase 2 element, and the town has $315,000 in Phase 2 fees in the bank. We've got a drainage easement that we've been arm wrestling about for 6 months. The developer has agreed to our terms on that. With respect to future housing, what this would do would be to amend the development agreement so that it expressly states that any future housing at University Station must be at a ratio of 25% residential to 75%, no more than 25% residential to 75% commercial. This assures that University Station will continue to be primarily a commercial development. Those are the basic elements.
Yeah, so just to ask a couple of questions. So I do think what's important, because this gets very complicated when we start talking about the subsidized housing inventory and how things are calculated, that there has been an evolution over time around the calculation of long-term care units
Yes.
in the housing stock. So when Bridges was first built, when University Station Phase 1 was first laid out, there was not the expectation that those would be included throughout the Commonwealth. That was a common expectation.
That's correct.
That's fair to say. So over time, through litigation between developers and municipalities, and the evolution of regulations from the Department of Housing and Community Development, they're now included.
Yes.
So
But
we.
Can I
I'm sorry. Yeah,
put a
yeah.
finer point on that? And I
Yep.
know this stuff is inside baseball, and it's very nuanced. It is our anticipation that they will be included when a new subsidized housing index is published after the 2020 census.
Inventory.
Inventory, yes.
So we, trying to be proactive, the board, the town, Nora, Mike, you, have said to the developers, you need to help us mitigate the inclusion of those units in the housing inventory, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what the developer, what we have asked for, where we think we are, is 489,000 that was rightfully theirs, we're now gonna keep, right?
Yes.
The 315,000 for Phase 2, whatever remnant should have gone back to them after inspections, et cetera, will now remain with us, right?
Yep.
So that's in our side.
Same with the Pulte. If the Pulte project is approved, there'll be building permit fees to come.
Correct.
And the same would apply to those.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's the 489, the 315, Pulte, and then I think what's important too, that we recognize that there has been other non-contractual mitigation, right? The $200,000 for the resurfacing of Blue Hill Drive.
Correct.
Right,
That was,
okay.
that was something that Mike asked the developer, whether the building permit, the excess building permit fees that the developer was entitled to, whether that, we could use that money for repaving Blue Hill Drive. It was $200,000. They agreed. There was some landscaping improvements, other improvements over the years that they've agreed to allow us to use those funds.
Okay. So ultimately, the purpose of this, so everybody's clear, is we'll have $800,000 approximately that we didn't otherwise have. We will utilize that money to mitigate the inclusion of the units at Bridges towards affordable housing units for our subsidized housing inventory.
You won't be including the Bridges units. What you'll be doing is identifying existing units
That's
in
right.
town.
Right.
And, that some that may need some work in order to be able to include them on the subsidized housing inventory. Others that may need to be purchased or built.
Okay. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions. Thoughts, questions?
No, we've been through this around and around and around. So Dan, you and Nora and Mike, you've been in there. This is the best that you think that we can do at this point in time?
Yes.
Otherwise, anticipate litigation?
Yes. I have been assured you know, it was very easy for me to tell Mike that this was eligible for executive session, because, you know, I was told that we were headed towards litigation.
And to add to what has been discussed, we also will no longer need a warrant article
That's true.
on our warrant agenda for the May town meeting, specifically a placeholder article that was set aside if we needed it, that pertained to an amendment to the University Avenue Multiple Use District. So as part of resolving the situation, that article is no longer necessary.
That's true, and you should vote to, if you are inclined to vote in favor of this memorandum of understanding,
It's a
the-
two-part.
the motion that I gave you should also include,
Number 3.
you know, as a number 3, you withdraw the mixed-use overlay district zoning article.
And Deanna, just so people understand, at the time when they did phase 1, we couldn't anticipate that Epoch Bridges was gonna be covered or included in our housing inventory.
No, we fully anticipated, not only was that not gonna be included, but we anticipated that it would be treated as a commercial project, not as a residential project. And, you know, Mike, was there DOR ruling that came out at one point that, you know, that said it?
We expected it to be commercial from 2 points of view, one for taxation, the other for the housing mitigation aspect of it. It has been taxed at a residential rate, so we've already gotten one indication that that's out of state, which is looking at it, and DHCD will look at those units for inclusion in the denominator in the next, after the 2020 census,
So it'll be part of our total housing inventory.
part of our total. We expect it to be part of our total housing inventory going forward.
By contrast, say Clark House up at Fox Hill, those beds aren't counted.
Right. Because they're not permanent. If you will, they're more temporary than they are.
Yeah.
Versus Bridges, which is a long-term
Here.
kind of stay and, okay.
All of our units are temporary.
So,
Touche.
Depends on how, what your term is long-term.
I'd like to keep mine longer.
so Nora, is the warrant article we're talking about V, placeholder amendment to the University Ave multiple use overlay, just that one? Okay. So there would be 3. Any questions from the press or public? No questions?
Just one last thing. So,
Sure.
Deanna, with Epoch, the developer disagrees with us, and that's part of the reason we would be stuck in litigation.
That's absolutely true.
Mainly because we've had a lot of discussions, but just to make sure the public understands that it was unanticipated consequences, I guess they like to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, so I, at this time, will move that the board vote to approve and execute the memorandum of understanding with University Station Phase 2 LLC and authorize Mike Gillette, Nora Loughnane, and Dan Bailey to negotiate an amendment of the development agreement memorializing the terms of the memorandum of understanding.
You need to do it in pieces?
I was gonna do it in pieces. You don't know the, I need to.
Doesn't matter, you can do it in pieces,
Okay.
you can do it all at once.
And 2, find that the proposed Pulte condominium project at University Station does not pose new material adverse impacts or materially exacerbate existing adverse impacts to any adjacent property or the proximate neighborhood that have not been addressed by the MOU and amendment of the development agreement. Okay, you can do it all together, okay. And 3, I would move that the article, the warrant article reflected in the board's packet as letter V, amendment to the University Avenue Multiple Use District, be withdrawn at this time.
Can I do that as a motion, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay? Any,
I wouldn't say it's withdrawn at this time, it'd be withdrawn if the agreement is signed.
okay, so I amend my motion to reflect that it would be withdrawn when the agreement is signed between.
By all parties.
By all parties.
Well put.
Thank you.
Second.
Anything from public or press? Nothing, okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. Okay. Thank you, Dan.
And if you can give me
That's a lot.
3 signature pages, and then I'll type up the
You want us to sign
changes.
this?
Yeah, you can, the signature pages are tearaways,
Oh, okay.
not my favorite.
You got enough? For 9? I'll do them first thing in the morning.
8:30.
No, it's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
You have something.
I have PT,
right?
yeah.
I'm-
Sign it. I'm okay with it.
I think, yeah, you guys can figure that out.
Last one?
Thank you. Oh, I just did 2. Did you do 2 or 3?
One and 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said 2. Oh, you got a clean one? Oh, great, thank you.
Whether it gets
I
with,
hate for the whole
but whether it's.
Because if they don't sign it, we're wasting our time.
Yeah,
Right.
as soon as they sign. 'cause-
We need the fire sign first.
After round 1, yeah.
And so it's the memorandum of understanding that has to be signed. not the
Yes,
agreement.
correct.
Not-
The motion said it would be withdrawn when the agreement was signed.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
Might want to
Could you
restate
amend
that.
that to
Oh, wait, it says at the top of
It
it.
said when the agreement is signed.
Oh, I just used the term interchangeably. Do you want me to do it over?
Why don't we just,
Why don't we let the record
On full-
reflect?
On full execution of the
Uh,
memorandum
oh,
of understanding.
full execution of the memorandum of understanding.
Okay, so at this time, I would like to amend my previous motion, number 3 in my previous motion, that the warrant article reflected as letter V in the board's packet will be withdrawn.
Immediately upon execution of.
Full
Immediately
full
upon-
execution.
Immediately upon full execution of the memorandum of understanding. Is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, okay.
Dan, these are signature pages.
We don't have
I
anything else,
signed
do we?
that one too, so I don't know if you needed.
Oh, that's why
Third one, Sean?
oh, sorry. That's why
Yeah. That was, I thought one of them, but it's not.
I folded it originally.
Let's see
I
how
think
much
that's
can
it, right?
scratch on that.
So our next meeting is next Monday, right?
Next Monday,
At
6:30.
6:30,
In
at the
library.
library, in the
Okay.
small meeting room.
Okay.
Finance Commission.
And attending the Finance and Warrant Commission hearing.
Okay. Board of Selectmen's next meeting will be next Monday, March 5th, 2018, at 6:30 PM in the small meeting room at the Westwood Library.
Moving into.
And then we will attend the Finance Commission's warrant meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.